CEFP, Global Economic Dialogues.
Hello, everyone. We are warmly welcome you all to Ceylon Foundation for Economic Policy Analysis, the very first international talks. So this is episode number 1 in global talks that we are organizing from CEFP, Sri Lanka. So we have a wonderful guest, one of my closest friends from Bangladesh. She is Shozo Taluk, right? I would like to introduce her position very interestingly. She is working as a research associate at a very famous organization in Bangladesh. It is a Center for Policy Dialogues, which is also known as CPD in Bangladesh, right? She will be joining with us to talk about the economic recovery what happened in Bangladesh, along with economic recovery in Sri Lankan context. So as you everybody know, right, Sri Lanka's story and Bangladesh's story seems very similar in terms of economics. So that's why we have invited Shozo, one of the officers and the research associates from CPD Bangladesh, to talk about what are the similarities between the Sri Lanka's economic recovery story and Bangladesh economic recovery story. So I'm Pasan Vijayawardhan, the Chairman Director of Ceylon Foundation for Economic Policy Analysis. Let's just start the talk. Anyway, Shoso, it's time for you to introduce yourself other than the things what I have said.
Thank you so much, Pasan, for your introduction. Actually, you have covered everything, I guess. So let's just jump to the discussion. It will be good for us.
Great. Actually, our economic crisis, 2022 economic crisis, was the Sri Lanka's most hardest economic crisis, or whatever the hardest period that we have faced throughout the Sri Lankan history was 2022 economic crisis. So is that the same in terms of Bangladesh as well? Because I have seen what happened in the Sri Lanka was repeated in Bangladesh as well. Sri Lankan people came to the road and started protesting against the existing government, and we have taken, not we, actually the entire Sri Lanka has taken steps to drive away the rulers from the chairs. So that was repeated in Bangladesh. So what were the root causes for the crisis and when it was began in Bangladesh?
Thank you for your question. And I think it is quite the same as Sri Lanka, what has happened right there, and what has happened actually in Bangladesh. So I would like to share my PowerPoint presentation, if you don't mind.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm seeing my screen.
Yeah, of course. Transition of Bangladesh.
Yes, the transition of Bangladesh. So, as we all know, that the interim government of Bangladesh has come to power due to the July-August 2024 student-led mass uprising in Bangladesh, which was actually driven by the two key factors, that are the rising inequality and the lack of distributive justice in our country. So this then led to the fall of the previous autocratic regime on August 5, 2024, and which this mass uprising brought an interim government to power to fill this vacuum. And this interim government is led by Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus with 16 advisors initially, but currently the number is 23. So when this interim government came to power, the main challenge for the interim government was to inspect what type of economy it has actually inherited. So in order to find out what type of economy it has inherited, so it took 3 steps actually. The first one is to identification of the challenges and selection of then it selected the priority areas, then it took the reform initiative. The the identification of challenges has come up with the publication of a white paper. What we see from our previous development narrative, by dissectioning it, we saw that there are manifestations of corruptions in the banking sector due to loan scams and bank takeover and illicit financial flows, politically motivated unviable projects, inflated project costs, which is actually the inflated data, which we say, and project cost escalation, post approval, non competitive tender processes, unnecessary or poorly designed projects, nepotism in appointments, illegal land and asset acquisitions, misappropriation of land acquisition funds, awarding overpriced contracts, abuse of project resources, bribery, and misallocation of public funds, tax exemptions for elites, distorted supply chains, sharing insider information, collusive corruption, monopolistic corruption, preemptive information sharing corruption, and etc. and etc. So this to cut it short, if I can say that what are the magnitude of corruption, then this will be revenue leakages and fiscal drainage between 2009 and 2023, the illicit financial outflows averaged USD 16 billion annually, and public investment of the 16 billion invested in annual development program and development projects over the past 15 years, at least 14 to 24 billion dollar lost to political extortion, and distorted supply chains, erratic and politically influenced procurement policies have benefited powerful business groups while exacerbating consumer hardships. And banking and financial systems distressed assets as of June 2024, it was equivalent to the cost of constructing 14 Dhaka metro systems or 24 Padma bridges. And
So that actually shows, sorry for the disturbance. I think in your presentation, it is very clearly mentioned that corruption was one of the important reason and one of the crucial reason which affected for the crisis. I think it is almost same in Sri Lankan context. The inflated projects and nepotism, those were repeatedly happened in Sri Lankan history.
and
Now
also
those
the
things were
manipulation.
yeah, manipulation. Yeah, exactly. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Interesting to know what happened in Bangladesh.
Okay, and the labor migration also that has funneled through Hundi transactions by recruiting agencies for visa purchases, an amount which is 4 times the cost of constructing Dhaka metro stations and metro transportations. And if we see about what happened to the social safety nets, the poverty definition in Bangladesh was so fragile that if 20 million individuals remain just 2 days of lost work, they will fall into the extreme poverty line. This is the main issue of the social safety nets, and there are also another issues in the social safety nets, that there are targeting errors, targeting beneficiary errors. There are both exclusion errors and both inclusion errors. And environmental mismanagement, politically patronized mismanagement of climate resources has derailed sustainability initiatives and threatened long-term resilience against climate-induced risks.
Yeah, one
These
important it shows up. I think you are mentioning that over 20 millions of the people are remaining in the poverty line, is it? Yeah. So I
Yes,
think it is
they will remain in the poverty line. They are in the poverty limit actually,
poverty.
and verge of the limit. And if
Okay.
you if they remain 2 days of out of 2 days of loss of jobs, they will fall into the extreme poverty line from the
Yeah, in the
verge.
borderline. Yeah, in the
Yes,
borderline. Yes. So actually, this count is exactly equal to the population of Sri Lanka. So I think Dhaka's population is almost exceeding the Sri Lanka's population. Sri Lanka's
yes,
population is around 20 million, 21 million. So I think, yeah, so population of Sri Lanka is equal to this count. That means we can understand what is the largeness, substantiality of this issue. Yeah, go ahead.
yes. And these are the facts that came out from the white paper of Bangladesh, and later, based on these issues, the government reform 11 reform commissions, and these 11 reform commissions are
That
okay.
means, as I understood, the white paper is presenting the issues that they have identified from Bangladesh context, no? When this interim government came to the power.
Sorry, can you just repeat it?
Yeah, sure. So this white paper is presenting the issues that interim government understood from Bangladesh context, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Actually, I'm facing some technical issues, I guess. My
Right,
screen.
Okay, that's fine. I'll present some scenarios from the Sri Lankan context. Then we'll move back to your presentation then.
Okay,
Right.
sure.
Okay. So I'll share my screen, what happened in Sri Lankan context. Actually, I think you can see Sri Lanka economic recovery story in 2024. Right.
Okay.
Let me just share the screen. Yeah. Actually, I will be talking firstly about the nature of economic crisis, what happened in 2022. But in your context, I think that was started in August of 2024, no? Your
No, the worst thing was happened back in 15 years. And the white paper is actually based on the past 15 years of data.
Exactly. But driving away the power forces and everything was happened. People what was happened in 2024 August. Is that
No, not August. It actually started happening since July 2024. It
2024?
took
Exactly.
3 months.
Okay. Nice. So in our case, I think our struggle was started in 2022 April, if I'm not mistaken, and that was dragged till 2022 July, right? However, the biggest struggle was happening in 2022 July, right? So yeah, it's something which happened in this month, right? This kind of a month. Okay, anyway, this is the nature of the economic crisis in 2022. It was very worst. So can you see my screen? 2022 marked the
Yes.
worst economic meltdown in Sri Lankan history. Just see, right? Crisis was at a very worst situation. Okay, around $51 billions of current debt was there in 2022. Okay, unpaid debt of the government. And also, we had around very limited reserves in terms of dollars. We had around 50 millions of US dollars. Okay, what to do with use of 50 millions of US dollars? No, nothing can be done. It was not enough at least to satisfy our import requirements in next month, at least next couple of weeks. It was very struggling. So our foreign reserves were not sufficient enough to at least to import the basic raw materials, basic essential needs such as fuel, milk powder, etc. So because of this reason, long queues were there, right? Even in petrol sheds, even in supermarkets, lots of queues were there, right? And people were dying inside the queues as well. So that was the substantiality of the crisis. However, this was not an overnight scenario. We can see lots of things what were happened even in the past as well. So I can't say that this was started in 2012. I can't say that this was started in 2018. Okay, I can't say this was started in 1948, in which we have received independence. So this was kind of a historical scenario which repeatedly contribute for the crisis actions. So in 2009, we have ended our civil war. But after that, then 2019 onwards, after 10 years of time period, then the main symptoms of crisis was started. Right? In 2019, we have experienced the East attack. In 2020, COVID was there. And in 2021, along with COVID, shortage of supply was there. And again, the prices have gone up, and the world situation also influenced on the Sri Lankan situation. And in 2002 April, yeah, the situation came very worse. Okay, that's why that can be identified as the starting point of Sri Lanka's crisis, and central bank started to announce that Sri Lanka is a default nation to the world. And after that announcement, okay, rest of the world were not in a situation to lend more and more loans to country Sri Lanka. Okay, so we have to solely depend on the multilateral loans, not on bilateral loans. Okay, so countries like China, countries like Japan, they were the main lenders in addition to India, right? But those countries said that we are not going to give more loans because country Sri Lanka is labeled as a default nation by the central bank governor himself, right? So after now that announcement, it was a black history for Sri Lanka. However, then dollar inflow to the country Sri Lanka was stopped. Tourism was fallen down. The foreign worker remittances, the values were gone down. So, however, by the time of 2022 May, we didn't have good foreign reserves, simply forex, at least to cater the essential needs, as I mentioned earlier, the fuel, milk, powder, rice, and all these things. Right. So this was the situation. So let's see what happened after that one. Right, you can see our inflation with the shortage of supply. What happened to the inflation? Inflation was at very low level at the time of January in 2021. You can see my green, it's not green line, my purple line. My purple line was at was very closer to the horizontal axis. That means it was very closer to zero. But what happened? By the time of June 2022, it went up to 42.4 percentage, the purple line. That is non-food inflation. But when you are looking at the food inflation, the green line, it went up to 80.1 percentage by the time of June 2022. But however, by the time of September 2022, the situation was very worse. What happened? Okay, our food inflation went up to 95 percentage, and the total inflation went up to 70 percentage. But luckily, Sri Lanka has already taken some quick actions to reduce this burden. So what happened? Right, we have taken some actions. These are the actions Sri Lanka took to mitigate the situation. Right. So I would like to summarize all the actions into 4 major bullet points. So the very first bullet point is commencement of negotiation with the IMF to secure the financing facilities. I would like to give kudos to the President, Prime Minister, and that cabinet who took over the challenge by the time of 2022 in order to have negotiations with IMF. And I want to thank for the Secretary of Finance Ministry and the central bank governor who took immediate actions in order to combat with the problem. However, we have started the negotiations with IMF and taken extended fund facility by the time of 2023 beginning quarter. And thanks to that one, we have taken around 3 billions of US dollar loan from them. This was the 17th time that we have gone to IMF. But this is very, very, very significant because this is the first time that we are going to IMF as a default nation, right? However, we had a good responsibility since we have approached to IMF as a default country. So there was no room for us to do any mistake hereafter. That's why we have temporarily suspended the foreign debt service payment. Okay, we have stopped all the bilateral foreign debt service payments, even though we have continued multilateral loan repayments. However, at the same time, we have started debt restructuring process since we were not in a situation to pay the loans, right? We have negotiations with China. We have started negotiations with India, Japan, Paris Club, and everybody in order to restructure the debt or loans what we have taken from the foreign world. Then from the side of the central bank, they have taken very interesting steps. Number one, allowed exchange rate to float. Okay. It was fixed in a certain situation, and it was not open to the free market forces like demand and supply. But central bank took a steps to float this one and give freedom for market to decide the exchange rate in the country. However, they have increased the interest rates immediately, okay, in order to control the money supply and everything, right? And through that, they have reduced the demand, and through that, they tried to take this inflation to a single digit number and safeguard the stability of the financial system. I want to say that the countries like Lebanon have faced some financial system crises, but thanks to central bank actions, we haven't seen any financial system instability throughout the period. Then from the end of the government, yes, government also had a responsibility to control the fiscal policy, what they have done. Okay. Sri Lanka was labeled as one of the countries with the lowest government revenue. It was at around 8% of government revenue from the GDP. It was the third lowest in the whole world. Okay, our government revenue has already gone down because of the wrong policy actions that were taken at the end of the 2019 period. Then government who came in 2022 started introducing bold package to enhance tax revenue, right? However, luckily now we have exceeded 10% of government revenue, and we are moving towards the 15% of GDP as the benchmark, as not as the benchmark, as the target of this tax revenue, government revenue. And temporarily, government has already stopped the non-essential government recruitments, right, in order to reduce the burden on the government workers. And temporary stoppage of the non-urgent capital expenditure. They have stopped constructing roads and everything, highways and everything for temporary time period, and impose restrictions on non-essential and non-urgent imports. Around 300 plus items were totally stopped in terms of importing, right? And Sri Lanka has already started SOE, state-owned enterprise restructuring process. There are lots of inefficient state-owned enterprises. Actually, it's not a duty of the government to do businesses. It's a duty of the or it's a role of the private sector to do the businesses. So government want to move away from the business doing role and give that responsibility to private sector. That's why SOE restructuring process was restarted by establishing SRU, SOE restructuring unit. And yes, very interestingly, commenced energy sector reforms, including cost reflective price mechanism. Do you know, Shoza, right? After 2014, our petroleum prices were not changed until 2023. So see, I think, yeah, more than 8 years of gap, right? So within this very
Yes.
period, okay, within this decade, 1 decade period, we haven't changed, we haven't amended the petroleum prices. That means petroleum were provided at subsidized price. So because of that, we were not able to cover at least cost of the petrol. That's why this cost reflective price mechanism was introduced. Thanks to that, now petroleum losses, the petroleum corporation losses are slightly decreasing. These are the actions. So I'm interested to know what sort of actions that Bangladesh has taken in order to overcome and mitigate this economic crisis, what happened in Bangladesh.
Okay. First, I would like to ask a question from you.
Yeah.
That in that crisis moment in Sri Lanka,
Hmm.
what was the situation of employment scenario at the time?
Yeah. So most of the time, one of the very important problem that we have faced was the international migrations, right? Our human capital have migrated. I think you have already mentioned the labor migration was there even in Bangladesh, right?
Yes.
So most of the doctors, engineers, sometimes the university lecturers have resigned from their positions and moved to the foreign nations because they have seen kind of instability in the country, Sri Lanka, and they have not seen any kind of a good future for their kids within the country Sri Lanka. Because of that, they have migrated. But there was a very, very, very fast wave of migration in 2022 and 2023. But by the time of 2024, it was slightly reduced. And now, even today in 2025, we can't see that much of big wave in terms of internal migration. And unemployment was increasing, right? But anyway, in 2020 until 2023, the Department of Census and Statistics haven't done a proper survey to see the latest unemployment data. Only after 2023, we have seen what happened to the unemployment. Unemployment was increased basically because of COVID pandemic situation, economic crisis, especially the variable income earners have lost their jobs.
Okay. So you will be surprised to know that in Bangladesh, the most important driving factor that worked for that uprising that happened in July and July to August 2024 in Bangladesh was 56% of the government services jobs were reserved were actually reserved for the freedom fighters and other marginalized communities and female and for them, and that was the actually that was the actually driving factor. Student first, they have protested against it, that why they are only fighting for the 44% of the seats, while 56% of them were actually reserved. And then that led to the huge people-led mass uprising in our country. Actually, unemployment was the bottom point in that case. And now I would like to share my other half of the presentation to you.
Sure. I think that means nothing can be taken at free of attempt, no? There should be attempted. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So what sort of action Bangladesh has taken?
So, based on the inspection from the white paper, the government actually took reform initiatives, and these are the 11 reform commissions that they have already submitted their report to the interim government regarding the constitution, election, police reform, anti-corruption, public administration, judiciary reform, media reform, health reform, and labor reform, and women affairs reform, and local government reform commissions. And there are also the central bank has taken some initiatives like yours, that they have floated they have floated the exchange rate. That's the reason the inflation has actually the inflation and overall the monetary thing has stabilized in our country. And if I talk about the tax revenue collection structure, actually, after the publication of the budget fiscal year 26 by this interim government, which was expected to be a very different one. But actually, it came out the same as before, which is very depressing in our country. So these are the key messages from the budget. As you can see,
this is the latest budget, no?
Yes, this is the latest budget, and these are the messages from the latest budget, that macroeconomic realities are not fully reflected in the setting benchmark and economic policy. Ignoring the latest BBS data and employment as a policy anchor weakens the credibility and policy alignment. Actually, what I'm trying to say from here, that the macroeconomic reality is not reflected in the projection. The way they have projected, actually they have followed the previous pattern of projection. So here are the highlights from the budget fiscal year 26, which is led by the interim government. So the key messages are: macroeconomic realities are not fully reflected in the setting benchmark and economic policy. Ignoring the latest Bureau of Statistics data and employment as a weakens the credibility and policy alignment. And fiscal framework remains unrealistic and expected. It was expected to go through a significant change, but the tradition of the past regime continues. and fiscal measures lack transparency and are often not backed by evidence. If we come about the revenue mobilization, it again continue to rely on indirect taxes in our country, not the direct taxes or expansion or any reform expanding the direct taxes.
That is the
And
same situation in
as
Sri
a
Lanka.
result, yes, yes, as a result, it disproportionately putting a burden on the low income and middle income people, and the budget signals no meaningful structural shift in revenue mobilization. As a result, the limited fiscal space will continue to haunt Bangladesh. And these are the recent concerns regarding the reform initiative of the interim government, because from our perspective, from Center for Policy Dialogue (CPD) and our platform, which is hosted by the Center for Policy Dialogue, which is named the Citizens Platform for SDGs Bangladesh. And from these platforms perspective, the concern is right now that how will the interim government will address the reform initiatives to the policy space, because we have not seen any reform initiatives reflection in the budget fiscal year 26. So this is the main concerning issue. And again, the government which have came to power from an anti-discrimination movement, again it is defining that it is the same as the previous regime and showing the anti-equity biasness in our country. And this is also the concerning fact in our country. And since everything is still on the process, we don't know what will happen to the next, because the interim government that work on the budget that was set by the previous government, and surprisingly, this government which has already published this budget will be implemented by the other government, because of the election, because of our upcoming election date actually is on February or something,
2026.
January or February. Yes.
Hmm.
So
Then
we
that will
don't
be
know. Yes,
that will be the
we
next
don't know that.
democratic election, no?
Yes, and we don't know that it will be able to uh, implement all the reform recommendations,
Hmm.
or integrate the reform initiatives to the policy space. We don't know actually.
Hmm.
So this is just bizarre in our country.
Yeah. So, sir, I have one question from this particular slide, which can be seen on the screen. So, the third point, the fiscal measures lack transparency. I think that is a kind of a problem existing in Sri Lankan context as well, the lack of fiscal transparency. So, were there any action taken by the interim government of Bangladesh in order to ensure the fiscal transparency? Have they opened up any kind of a platform from which general public can see how their taxed income is used for different kinds of expenses of the government? Are there any kind of a platform developed by the interim government?
No, there is no such kind of initiative happened till to date in our country. And it is actually the matter of concern, because the civil society community in our country has always pushed for a digital platform for the collection of taxes and that revenue mobilization thing and everything. But it didn't happen due to the bureaucratic pressure in our country, and it's still the bureaucratic pressure is still the same as before. That's the reason this government is also unable to implement any sort of reform activities.
So what do you think? So you have driven away one political party and one regime actually, and taken the interim government to the power. Okay. So what do you think as Bangladeshi person, as a normal citizen, are you happy about the actions taken by the interim government in terms of economics and in terms of political streams?
Well, if I talk about the banking reform thing, I was actually satisfied. I was quite satisfied with the banking reform initiatives and the how it has changed the board members of the bank, because of there are so many banking and illicit funding flows in our country. That's the reason I'm quite satisfied with the banking reform, and also the inflation rate, the way the interim government has stabilized it finally.
So what was
Actually,
the
from 2 digit to 1 digit. Right now,
right.
it's actually 9%, 9%, and it is targeted to decrease by 6% actually in this fiscal year.
So what was the previous one at the time of crisis?
At the time of crisis, it was actually 13%,
30.
but we felt like 13 13%, but we felt like it is more than that, because I have already mentioned you about the data data
Yeah.
manipulation thing.
Uh-huh. So what they are reporting is the not the truth.
Yes, it was just unreliable. So
Hmm.
we cannot say anything based on that unreliable data, which is actually proven
Okay.
due to the white paper.
Cool. Shosa, I have some interesting stuff to show as the last part of my side. So I'll share how the recovery of Sri Lanka was happened. Right. Could you share? Right. Okay. Then we'll go to your presentation later. Shosa, you can end up presentation by offering the share.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
stopping.
great. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'll show how the recovery was happened, and then after that, you can give the final remarks at the end of the presentation. Right. So you could see my slides. It says V-shaped recovery story of Sri Lanka in 2024. Right. There are multiple recoveries that could be happen after a crisis. No, you know that it can be V-shaped recovery. It's the best situation, and it can be a W-shaped recovery, falling again, increasing, improving, then again falling and again improving. And also it can be a U-shaped recovery, falling and stagnating for some time and growing again. And it can be an L-shaped recovery, falling, stagnating in the lower level. So however, luckily we have taken a V-shaped recovery. And yes, even the international platforms and international majority have appreciated on the V-shaped recovery that we have taken within a couple of years, thanks to the government and all the government officials who have contributed for the success. Right. So this is the recovery. Okay. So we have discussed about the inflation. You can see what was the inflation in 2022 September, 69.80. Right. You said that during the crisis period, you don't know whether it is manipulated or not. But anyway, the reported value in Bangladesh, it was 13 percentage. No, I'm correct.
Yes.
Yes, 13 percentage. But in Sri Lankan context, in 2022 September, it was approximately around 70 percentage. This was considered as the highest inflationary statistic which was reported in Sri Lanka after the independence. However, now you can see in 2024 end, right? I'm not talking about the 2025. By 2024 end, I can't see, I don't think you can see this one anyway, where this value is minus 1.70 percentage. Minus means it's not almost an inflation further. This is an deflation. So Sri
Yes.
Lanka is currently experiencing a further deflationary situation, and central bank is thinking that this deflation will continue and up until the end of this year. But by the most probably by the end of this year and by the beginning of next year, we will be coming back to a single middle digit number of inflation. Anyhow, Sri Lanka has already reduced our inflation drastically, very fastly, rapidly, thanks to the monetary policy actions. I said that soon after arrival of the present governor of the central bank, what is the very first action that he have taken is increasing the policy rates and giving full independence. Yeah, kind of good independence for the central bank through new Central Bank Act in 2023, help them to stop printing money unnecessarily to satisfy the fiscal requirements. So printing money it was reduced, and policy rates were increased. It controlled aggregate demand. Finally, we have successfully reduced inflation. And look at the GDP growth rate. Okay, by the time of 2022, that means during the crisis period, can you see the number? It is minus 7.3 percentage. Did Bangladesh experience any minus economic growth throughout the last few years?
No, actually, GDP growth, what has been shown in the GDP growth, it was actually less than 3, it was in real less than 3%, but the data was inflated. Yes,
Yeah.
but the data was inflated.
Yeah. Anyway, that was positive value, no? Not a negative value, but we have experienced a negative economic growth rate or GDP growth rate since 2020, except in 2021. In 2020, 2022, 2023, in all the years we have experienced minus economic growth. But by the time of 2024, we have taken 5% of economic growth. It's a positive value. Positive. What is the current economic growth of your country?
Current one is actually approximately 6.6, according to the World Bank, 6.6%.
Yeah, that is not your local data, but it's a kind of international data. Yeah.
Yes.
So it can't be a manipulated one. Right. Okay. And the second thing is per capita income. See what happened our per capita income. In 2022, it was around 3,464 US dollars per annum. Right. Okay. And it increased up to 4,516. See the jump. It was a very big jump, even under a kind of a recovery situation. Despite the recovery, we have taken a very big jump from 3,400 something to 4,500 something, right? Do you have any kind of idea about Bangladesh per capita income? The approximate value?
Currently, actually, I cannot say the actual per capita income because I'm not so sure about the amount.
Yeah.
But what I know is it has the amount to graduate the least developed countries limit.
Okay. Yeah, so we are also still in the lower middle income country. Even the World Bank has already confirmed the lower middle income country status of Sri Lanka for 2025 a few days back. And our exchange rate value, that means value of $1 in terms of rupees, it was at around 365. It was very closer to 400. Okay. $1 in Sri Lankan rupees, it was approximately closer to 400. So it went down to 293. It is still a bigger number, but
Yes.
it went down to 293. What about $1 value in Bangladesh currency?
Actually, I would like to say $100 value,
Yeah.
$100, no, sorry. $1 is equal to, in Bangladeshi taka, 123, or in between 123 to 129. Yes.
Yeah, approximately 120. So that means
Yes.
Bangladesh taka is more stronger than Sri Lankan rupee. Okay. So even
Yes.
even after your crisis, your one is still 120, but our one is 293, which is
But
still closer. Yeah.
it is still not changing the scenario like yours, because
Yeah.
the inflation rate is currently quite impressive in Sri Lanka right now, but in Bangladesh it is quite a matter of concern.
Of course. True. Right. And in terms of dollar reserves, this is more interesting. By the time of 2022, it was 1.7 US dollars in billions, right? And this went up to 0.5 US dollar billions as well. As I mentioned earlier, 51 US dollars in millions were there. So this value of the gross official reserves were at 1.7 US dollar billions in 2022 August, and we have increased it up to 6.1 by the end of 2024, and even by the time of 2025 we have further increased this to 6.5 US dollar billions plus. And government debt. Okay, I think you will be surprising by looking at our government debt. As a percentage of GDP, it was 114.20, right? That means from if the GDP is 100, our debt burden is 114. I don't know what is the picture in the Bangladesh, but we have reduced it to 96 percentage by the time of 2024. Okay, actually, IMF asked us to reduce this value to 95 percentage by the time of 2032. But see, within couple of years, we have reduced it to 96 percentage. Their target was to reduce this to
Yes.
95 percentage by the time of 2032. But by 2024,
Almost the same number as the target one.
yeah, of course, just a 1 percentage change is there.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And the total government revenue, as I mentioned earlier, in 2022, we has the third lowest government revenue in the whole world, 8.3 percentage, and we have increased it up to 13.7 percentage by the time of 2024. Do you know what is the IMF target? It was 15 percentage, right? We have already came very closer to the IMF target. Now it is more than 13 percentage. And within, if we are in the right track in next few years as well, we will be moving ahead. And but the fiscal balance, that means the gap between the government receipts and the government expenditure, it was minus 11.7 percentage. The fiscal balance was at a deficit at the time of 2022, and we have reduced the deficit to minus 6.8 percentage by the time of 2024. It's a good improvement. Okay. So, however, we have recorded positive balances in the primary account in the budget by the time of 2023 and 2024 as well. Positive balances in the primary account, but anyway, still a negative value in the fiscal balance, but it is quite good growth. So these are the pictures actually regarding the Sri Lanka's recovery. I'm so proud to say that Sri Lanka is one of the nations with fast economic recovery, thanks to the government, thanks to the government officials, thanks to central bank, thanks to the finance ministry, and every citizen in Sri Lanka who were tolerating during the period of crisis. So yeah, Shoza, in terms of Bangladesh recovery process, you can give the final remarks. It's time for you.
Actually, I guess it is too early to reach to the conclusion, because it is still on the process in Bangladesh. Yes. So what I can say, please pray for us for our economic recovery and for obviously reducing the discrimination in our country, the rising inequality and everything. Actually, the most disheartening thing is, according to the World Bank report, as of April 2025, during the FY25, almost 2.7 million people became unemployed, and 1.8 among them are women. This is the most disheartening fact.
That means as a percentage of the total unemployment, how much? The women unemployment?
The women unemployment actually the quite higher than their male counterparts, and the gender gap and the wage rate ratio, everything is women are not the gainers.
Exactly. That was repeatedly happening in Sri Lanka.
Yes, and this is repeatedly happening in Bangladesh, and also the security and everything, the issues, the recent recurring issues regarding the women and everything is also raising concerns,
Yeah.
And also if we look at the budget allocation, the gender budget allocation, we saw that the issues concerning women justice and women justice and security and this sort of programs actually received less allocation this time. This is also a matter of concern.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Shoza, now Bangladesh is in an IMF program, or they are running with their own projects in
No,
an IMF.
they're in an IMF program, and IMF
Okay,
is already giving us targets like yours to
right.
fulfill the targets and everything, and we are still
In your
kind of
country, yeah, IMF program was started on when?
uh IMF program has started uh after COVID or during COVID, I guess. It has
Okay.
started most recently, you know.
Still, one program is continuously continuing, no? Yeah,
Yes,
since the post-COVID period. Okay, nice, interesting.
yes,
And finally, one more question from you. Right now, you say that by the next year beginning, there will be an election, a new
yes.
government will be appointed. Okay, I think I have visited Bangladesh in back in 2023. And when I was visiting, people were saying that there is no democracy in the country and there is no opposition in the country and everything. So sometimes this election will be after the protests of the students and everything, right? I think this election will be the very first democratic election after the crisis. Is that?
Uh, we are hoping that it will be the first
Yeah,
democratic election in our country.
yeah.
We're still hoping that.
Okay. So, in case if a new government comes and change the track, IMF track, are there any risk of re-falling of Bangladesh, or are there any possibility to continuation of the same procedures as IMF recommended for us? You.
Uh, Actually, uh, the main concern of Bangladeshi people right now is whether the upcoming government in our country will repeat the autocratic regime or not. This is the first question. And the government, the upcoming powerful party, which is we are expecting that it will come to the power. Uh, so it was out of the uh, out of the country economic policy making processes from 15 years, you know, because of our
Hmm.
that autocratic regime. So after 15 years, will they repeat the same one, or they will change? They will bring a drastic change? That is the matter of concern in our country right now.
Okay, so thank you very much, Shoza. I think you are also in an IMF program. We are also still in an IMF program. So when it comes about the Sri Lankan history, that during last 60 years, do you know, this is a very surprising factor. In last 60 years, since 1965, right? 42 years of Sri Lankan history, we have spent along with full-time or part-time engagement with IMF program. So our most closest crush is IMF. Actually, that's why we were living together with IMF in last 40 years, 42 years during the last 60 year of time period. Okay, so we are always praying for the success, for the upliftment of Bangladesh economy, because Bangladesh has already supported us also during the crisis period by lending loans and everything. So we are having kind of a gratitude on it, right? Because when South Asian countries were standing for our well-being, that's a great assistance for us to go and grow. So thank you very much for Shosa for your time as a research associate of Center for Policy Dialogues in Bangladesh. Okay, so we are going to wind up this session, right? And again, thanks for the CPD in Bangladesh and Shosa. And we are going to have the second episode of international talks in near future. And keep in touch with CFEP Sri Lanka. This is Ceylon Foundation for Economic Policy Analysis. Good luck.